You lead.
You are passionate.
You volunteer.
You are a mentor.
You are powerful.
You dream.
You are caring.
You nurture Jewish homes.
You blaze it forward.
You are talented.
You inspire.
You inspire.
You are dedicated.
You are bold.
You care for those in need.
You make things happen.
You are giving.
You are Woman of the Year.
Welcome to Jewish Federation of Orange County Women's Philanthropy's Virtual Women's Voices 2021. I am Tanya Newman.
And I am Isabel Tischler.
We are the co-chairs for this year's Virtual Women's Voices. This is a voices like none we've had in the past. Today is a celebration of women and of community, but it comes in the backdrop of a global pandemic in which only now we are starting to see signs of hope. We are living through a health and financial crisis that has taken a terrible toll and caused immense suffering. Around the globe, more than 3 million people have perished from COVID-19, including loved ones and dear friends here in our community. Some in our community are still in mourning, and many are experiencing financial and emotional hardships. It is particularly in times of crisis that we see the strength of community and the resilience of individuals as they come together to support one another and to do the extraordinary for their community. And that is why we are here today to celebrate you. Here in Orange County, you, the philanthropists of Jewish Federation's Women's Philanthropy, embody that spirit of giving, of stepping up when you know you are needed, and of coming together to create an impact greater than yourself. In the year of pandemic, you continued to be the change makers and shapers of our Orange County Jewish community. Your dedication and commitment of time and talents and your philanthropy makes a difference in the lives of people locally and globally. In just a few minutes, you will see what you have done in this critical year, and you will see why we are honoring all of you. You are all Woman of the Year because you are the fuel that enables Jewish Federation of Orange County to support the people most in need and to sustain vibrant Jewish life in our community. And so today, we are thrilled that you are here to celebrate our collective power as women and philanthropists supporting our community through Women's Philanthropy of Jewish Federation of Orange County. As mothers, grandmothers, sisters, daughters, family, and friends who understand the Jewish values of tzedakah, tikkun olam, and gemilut chasadim, and the importance of making positive change, we are here to be inspired and empowered together to be the change we hope to see in the world.
We are disappointed that we're still unable to gather physically, but thanks to technology, we can gather in a virtual ballroom for today's program. We hope that you enjoyed the pre-event schmooze and were able to visit with friends and fellow community members who you may not have seen for some time.
Virtually or in person, it takes an amazing team to create women's voices. Before we get started, I want to thank on behalf of Women's Philanthropy and the Voices Committee, everyone who made today possible. Thank you to our virtual Women's Voices Zone Committee and all of the members of the Women's Philanthropy Council. We could not possibly host this event without the generosity of our sponsors and underwriters who share our commitment to supporting our Jewish community. Thank you to Dina Marciano Designs, our first diamond sponsor, and to platinum sponsor Allergan, an AbbVie company. This year, we received generous support from several Orange County Jewish community partners. Thank you to Tarbut Vitora for underwriting the virtual photo booth that some of you might have visited during the schmooze. And thank you to Heritage Point and the Jewish Community Foundation of Orange County. Your work is vital to our community, and we are grateful for your partnership on today's event.
We would also like to thank our Women Philanthropy Leadership, President Andrea Alfie, immediate past President Nadine Durbach, and Jewish Federation of Orange County Leadership, Jewish Federation of Orange County Board Chair and past Women's Philanthropy President Heather Klein, the Board of Jewish Federation of Orange County, including executive board members Stephen Gordon, Adam Miller, David Siegel, Stuart Wolf, and Sam Wyman. Chief Philanthropy Officer Stephanie Epstein, Chief Impact Officer and Director of the Rose Project, Lisa Armoni, Chief Financial Officer, Marcy Alford, Donor Relations Director, Joanna Samaroth, Special Events Director, Alexandra Moss, Creative Director, Nitzan Harel, and the entire staff of Jewish Federation.
Finally, our immense gratitude to the women who have truly gone above and beyond by formalizing legacy gifts to Jewish Federation in their estate plan, which ensures that our community will remain vibrant and strong for many generations to come. And a heartfelt thank you to our newest endowed line of Judah donors, whose gifts of $5,000 or more will continue in perpetuity.
This morning, we will be sharing the collective impact that your dollars have and continue to make in our community. Throughout today's program, you will be invited to make your donations. And there are several ways to do so. Visit jewishoc.org/voicesdonate or text 949-979-4711 and follow the prompts, or email woman@jffs.org with your donation amount. If you registered before May 7th, I invite you to now take out the gift box you received and open it up to see the surprises inside. And as you do, we hope you'll be inspired by this very special musical presentation, lovingly created for you by the wonderful members of our Orange County Cantorial community.
And the more we join in the refrain, the more we feel strong.
There is a power in this place and time. It shapes the rest of our lives.
For when we return
Wow, nothing like the power of music to get us started this morning. As we gather together as a community of strong women, strengthening and celebrating each other, it is a pleasure to see you at Virtual Women's Voices 2021. Today, we gather to shine a bright light on the lasting impact you have on building our community here in Orange County, in Israel, and around the world. Together, alongside 148 federations connected through Jewish Federations of North America, and in collaboration with our overseas partners, we fulfill the mission of Kalal Yisrael, caring for the Jewish people all over the globe, whether in Orange County and the United States, Israel, India, South America, the former Soviet Union, the list goes on and on. In recent days, our deep commitment to Kalal Yisrael has been in the forefront of our minds and felt deep in our hearts, as our Israeli brothers and sisters have been the target of relentless assault. There have been innocent lives lost, scores injured, horrific damage to homes, and emotional trauma that will, unfortunately, linger. And just as we are here for the people in need at home, our commitment to Israel is translating to a financial commitment as well. With the help of your generosity, our federation is sending critical dollars to our partner organizations in Israel who are assisting with recovery efforts. In times of crisis, Jewish Federation is here for good. As you join us on this journey this morning, you will witness the impact of your philanthropic dollars by hearing moving stories from community members across all different ages and stages of life who you have helped over the past year. And you'll learn about programs that mean so much to so many. We also will welcome two dynamic Jewish women leaders, Barry Weiss and Dr. Erica Brown, both sharing their experiences as female leaders in their own way. Before introducing our first guest, I want to share with you that as women's philanthropy donors, you contribute over $1 million of Orange County annual campaign funding each and every year. You are the fairy godmothers that make all of this possible. Thank you for your ongoing support to ensure Jewish Federation is here for good. Elaine, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elaine, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here today to share my story with you. I was rifling through my car washing supplies in my carport. My car was filthy and needed a good bath. So I was sorting through everything, trying to find sponges and car wash solution. And I came across my big blue IKEA shopping bag. And at first I thought, why do I still have this thing? It's outlived its useful purpose. Why don't I just fling it into the recycler? And then I remembered something. That bag was the key to my survival. What I would do each night is I would take that bag, go down to the beach, and collect bottles and cans out of the trash. And I wasn't doing it to be eco-conscious or to raise funds, although those are very noble reasons. I was doing it so I could redeem the bottles and cans to pay for gas and food. So what I would do every night is I would put on a baseball cap, a long sleeve shirt, blue jeans, thick gloves, and I'd take my blue IKEA bag and I'd start at one end of the beach, start sorting through the trash and pulling out bottles and cans and making my way slowly down the beach. But the thing is, I was so ashamed of having to do this in our community that I didn't tell anybody where I was going. So I would collect bottles and cans, and then I would also go to my grocery store job. And if it's one thing about working in a grocery store is that they hire quickly, they pay weekly, and they always need help. And I was physically exhausted and emotionally worn down. So finally, I started calling local agencies. I knew I needed help, and I needed help quickly. Rent was coming due. I didn't have the means to pay it no matter how hard I tried. So I got on the phone, I got on the computer, and this is what I found. I found out that I'm too young for senior services, too old for youth services, don't have the right family size. I don't practice their religious traditions, which was a requirement for receiving services. I'm not addicted to drugs or alcohol, homeless, or facing immediate eviction anyway. So in between calling agencies and sacking groceries and hauling 100-pound trains of shopping carts and collecting cans, I continued to call various agencies. And I also listed beloved items for sale on eBay and in garage sales. So finally, a friend of mine told me about Jewish Federation of Orange County and encouraged me to call. And I almost didn't, because at that point, I was so worn down from this whole process of seeking assistance, scratching through the trash, and slinging groceries. But something told me to give Jewish Federation of Orange County a call, and I'm glad I did. I filled out my Lifeline application packet, and I met with Nancy, who helped me formulate a plan for ongoing and future financial stability, which was really important. So a couple days later, I got a phone call that changed my life. I found out I was awarded an emergency rental grant from Jewish Federation of Orange County and their Lifeline program. And I mean it when I say I sat down and cried. I was so relieved. She restored my sense of humanity. To this day, I can't find the words to express my gratitude, not only for Nancy and the Lifeline program, but also to Jewish Federation of Orange County. I wasn't just given a gift card and sent on my way. Not at all. I was so happy to receive a phone call from Nancy from time to time asking if I was okay. In other words, it was what they call wraparound care. And that connection is so meaningful to me, because clawing one's way back from economic hardship isn't just about hard work. It's grueling. It's about luck. It's about being in the right place at the right time and being connected with people who are willing to help, who are willing to give, and who are generous in funding programs such as Lifelines through Jewish Federation of Orange County. Honestly, without your help, I don't know how I would have made it. And this miracle is brought to you by Jewish Federation of Orange County and the Lifeline program and your generosity. I am living proof that these programs not only enhance lives, but save them. Thank you for thinking my life is worth it. Included in your event gift box today is a blue bag keychain and change purse. I want this keychain to serve as a reminder that there are people in our community whose possessions would fill that big blue bag, or for people in our community whose monthly grocery allotment would fill that big blue bag. And then that's it. Or people like me who had to survive by picking recyclables from the trash every night and filling their big blue bag. And I hope by meeting me, you won't see your blue bag keychain as a reminder of a shopping trip or a day at the beach. So in closing, I ask that you increase our collective power by making an increased donation to the Jewish Federation annual campaign, so that together we can help more members of our community. Whether it is 10% or 18%, every dollar helps. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
Elaine, your story is a powerful example of why Jewish Federation is here to support community members in need. To echo Elaine's appeal, please join women in our community by making your 2021 annual campaign contribution today. You make the impossible possible, and your giving ensures Jewish Federation is here for good. The dollars you give help our Lifelines clients, but they do so much more. At this time of deep polarization and heightened anti-Semitism, your dollars educate and prepare teens and young adults for the anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist challenges they may face in their schools and on their college campuses. Thanks to you, the Rose Project of Jewish Federation equips young people in our community with the knowledge and skills they need to be confident in their Jewish identity, their connection to Israel, and to be leaders in the work to combat anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. We empower inspiring teens like Becca, who I invite to share her story.
Thank you, Stephanie and Women's Philanthropy, for inviting me to be a part of Virtual Women's Voices. My name is Becca Inlander, and I am currently a junior at Woodbridge High School in Irvine. This past fall, I decided to participate in the first ever Youth Leadership Initiative. The Youth Leadership Initiative is a program developed by the Rose Project of JFOC in partnership with the ADL to deepen Jewish identity and connection to Israel among Orange County teens and to provide them with the tools needed to counter anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Being Jewish has always been a vital part of my identity. I first experienced anti-Semitism at a young age. In second grade, a girl in my class accused me of having devil's horns because of my Judaism, and she spread this lie to everyone in my class. It didn't take long before all the other students believed it, and I even began to question who I was. This made me feel so confused and hated. I applied to the Youth Leadership Institute because I wanted to learn how to stand up for my Jewish faith and how to shut down the anti-Semitism that I encounter in my community. I also got involved because I wanted to be prepared to handle any anti-Semitism which I may experience as a Jew on campus when I go to college. What I learned through the YLI that had the greatest impact on me was how to combat anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism through thoughtful conversations. This program taught me the necessary knowledge I needed to understand my Jewish heritage and my ties to Israel. Through this knowledge, I was better able to teach others and respectfully bridge a divide between myself and friends who did not fully understand Judaism and its implicit connection with Israel. I want to use my voice when I encounter anti-Semitism. I want to speak up for myself and for my Jewish community. The Youth Leadership Institute gave me the knowledge and skills I need to tackle the anti-Semitism which plague college campuses, and to become a stronger Jewish leader in university. Without the generosity of donors in our community, the Youth Leadership Institute would not be available. Because of you, I was able to participate in this important program, along with 24 other teens throughout Orange County. Thank you for enabling me to deepen my Jewish identity and for empowering me to become a Jewish leader of tomorrow.
Becca, if you are among the great young adults leading our Jewish community into the future, I think everyone would agree that our community will be in great hands. Thank you for sharing your story, and kol hakavod. May you go from strength to strength. As Tanya mentioned in her opening remarks, this has been a challenging year for so many people in our community. Just 14 months ago, life changed dramatically, in an instant, for so many. Families found their financial situation in peril. For families like Tiffany's, Jewish Federation was there to help, with emergency COVID grants to help community members get through crisis that none of us could have ever anticipated. Tiffany, I welcome you to share your story.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, my name is Tiffany, and I am a mom of a 5-year-old boy and a wife down here in South Orange County in San Clemente. I was so honored when I was asked to share some words about my experience receiving assistance from Jewish Federation of Orange County over the course of this last year. My husband and I started a small business right as the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, we found ourselves in a very scary and tenuous situation. I was looking at having to remove my son from certain activities in his community in order just to funnel the money into paying a basic bill. What I did, because I had access to other moms and to a sense of community from PJ Library, is I reached out and I spoke with members of our community that were there for me and for my family. They directed me to Jewish Federation of Orange County, and we became recipients of generous, not just financial support, but moral support, which in the long run is the thing that I will take with me. I come here today to share not just my experience, but to let you know that the donations that you feel you're able to make affect people and families like me and like you. And that when we get back on our feet and we choose to redonate, we're just continuing a cycle of love and growth and strength that our community provides. Thank you so much for letting me share my experience today. And please, whatever you're comfortable with, donate. Thank you so much.
Tiffany, thank you for sharing your story with us. It demonstrates just how critical it is to have a strong community and a strong Jewish Federation that will be there to support our fellow community members in need. We hope that no one will ever need emergency assistance, but if and when they do, our Federation must be here for them. Beyond the stories that you've heard today, your collective philanthropy has helped in so many more ways. Your generosity provided a grant of $175,000 to provide home care, gift cards, medication, and other ways of support to over 120 Holocaust survivors living in Orange County, with more funding to come. You provided over $164,000 of grants and gift cards to over 400 families in need over the past year. You provided critically needed recovery funds right now to Israel and our overseas partners. You distributed over 160,000 PJ Library books to families with young children since the program's inception 10 years ago. And you continue to provide Jewish resources to 1,965 parents and caregivers monthly. You create ongoing connection to the Jewish community for Jewish adults with developmental disabilities through wellness, social, and art activities for residents of the Horowitz Family House and monthly Jeremiah Society programs. In honor of what would have been her 100th birthday today, we wanted to recognize Rose Lasher of blessed memory for her vision in creating the Jeremiah Society and for creating a safe space of vibrant Jewish life for community members with developmental disabilities. This and so much more is achieved because of you. Please consider making your donation to the 2021 annual campaign at a level that is most meaningful to you. Every dollar counts in helping to fulfill our mission of caring and strengthening our community. We are so grateful for your support, which has allowed us to achieve all that we have over the past year and before, and all that we will continue to achieve in the years ahead. Because of you, Jewish Federation is here for good. A strong Jewish community is built on the foundation of passionate and committed leaders and community members. And at the root of every dedicated Jewish community member are powerful Jewish stories, those transformational moments that shape our identity and our senses of connection and belonging. Those are the stories that pave the path of Jewish continuity and leadership. I'd like to now welcome Jewish Federation of Orange County Board Chair Heather Klein and Dr. Erica Brown, who will speak about Jewish self-discovery and its connection to Jewish leadership.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning. It's a real honor to be here this morning with Dr. Erica Brown, who is certainly a friend and familiar face to many who've been through leadership training through Federation and other organizations. Erica is the director of the Mayberg Center for Jewish Education and Leadership and associate professor of curriculum and pedagogy at the George Washington University, a Torah scholar and an author of many books and articles on leadership and particularly Jewish leadership. Thank you for being with us this morning. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about leadership and Jewish leadership and your Jewish journey.
Thank you so much, Heather. We're not going to call me Dr. Brown. That's the name of a soda. I'll just be Erica for our conversation today. And I'm interested, Heather, in your Jewish journey, because I understand that you had sort of, you had a legal career that you've now devoted to the Federation and just risen up the ranks. And I hear your praises. And so it's just really such an honor and delight to be with everyone today and to be with you in conversation. So I want to tell you a little bit about my Jewish journey and how I got involved in leadership and what I think this means and the ramifications for women being involved in leadership. When I was a kid, I grew up in a home. My mother is a child survivor of the Holocaust, and my grandparents were each liberated from Auschwitz a day apart, and they all found each other. It took a year, but they all found each other. And I grew up under the shadow of two great ideas or thoughts. One was, if my family survived in these kind of circumstances, I have to find some purpose. I have to do something extraordinary with my life. I mean, this was a miracle, and you have to deserve a miracle. At least that was in my understanding. But the other side of this, Heather, was a little bit darker. And the darker side was that the story was a story of desperation and persecution and sadness. And that was my Jewish life. The Jewish life was sitting at the Passover Seder and transitioning from the story of us leaving Egypt to the story of my grandparents leaving Auschwitz. And that was the central narrative. So we know something really interesting about resiliency in children and resiliency in people generally. And that is, if you have a family narrative, which Jews happen to be really great at, you tend to be more resilient. An Israeli researcher shared that there are two types of general family narratives. One is the ascending narrative. We came from nothing and we made something of ourselves. And I imagine that a lot of people here listening come from an ascendancy narrative. How about you, Heather?
I'm sort of a combo. I come from ascending with a cloud of doom, Jewish doom narrative. That's what I come from.
Cloudy with a bit of meatballs. Or there's the descending narrative, which is we had everything. Look who we were, and this is what we've come to. And what this researcher concluded was that people who have an oscillating family narrative, we've ascended and we've descended, those are the people who create the greatest resiliency, and family resiliency. And actually, I think so many women feel that they're in charge of their family's memory. So I would say that I had that strange thing going on, and I didn't see in Judaism a vehicle of joy, and I didn't see it as a path for my future. But something happened to me in fourth grade. I was not a popular kid. I was bullied a lot. And a kid from my Hebrew school, I just want to say for the record, I went to the world's worst Hebrew school. I got a junior Jewish encyclopedia for reciting the Shema, the central prayer of Judaism, quicker than anybody else. 45 seconds, that may be a Guinness Book of World Records. And my understanding was that to pray as a Jew is to read things that you don't understand quickly. So that was sort of the narrative. And in this Hebrew school, a friend of mine, Richard, invited me to a Shabbaton. I had no idea what that was, but it was an invitation that I didn't always get as a class nerd. And I was involved in a youth movement. It was actually NCSY. I became very involved on a leadership level. And as a teen, I was public speaking all the time. I was recruiting and raising money and raising awareness. And it gave me a lot of the tools that I think I not only have, but I've tried to impart to other people through that sense of what I got there. But I want to say something about leadership development, and I'd love to hear, Heather, your own story and your own development, and when you leaned into this. um, it the leadership development is separate from the Jewish story, which I had to explore for myself. What I saw at the Shabbaton were kids who were singing Jewish songs and closing their eyes and dancing and loving their families and loving community. And this was at a time when I didn't have a friend community, a strong friend community. My parents were going through a difficult divorce. And I saw this something joyful and a source of light somewhere. And so a lot of times in the Jewish community, we focus on board development and public speaking and fundraising. And we don't see that part of our leadership responsibility, maybe the biggest part, Heather, is telling a story of Jewish joy and meaning and bringing people into that circle and singing with them and dancing with them and making them feel that they belong. And so I'm interested in sort of how you got there.
Wow, that triggers a lot of really special dots that get connected in what you're saying. I can relate to everything you're saying. I also was a product of the Jewish youth movement, and I actually was a leader. I think I just had an aha moment. I really was a leader in that arena, but I didn't necessarily view myself as a leader. So all those moments and experiences of joy and celebration, which were devoid of that difficult cloud of the Jewish narrative, that's where I felt them when I was young. And I carried that all the way through different parts of my life and tried to access it through academics and through other areas of my life. And it's really just since I've taken this turn deeply into Federation and my work with women in the Federation system through, and National Women's Philanthropy and the Women of Women's Philanthropy and the incredible Jewish women of Orange County, that I have come to feel full circle that old experience of joy. And that said, it's balanced with the work that needs to be done, which is, as my grandmother said, that's why they call it work. It's hard. And finding that balance, but just seeking for those moments of joy and value and purpose that I absolutely do feel in doing this work. And one of the things that has come to me, which I think really relates, and I'd like to ask you about it, to your work, is learning to tell our own story and knowing and experiencing and articulating the value of that story. And that might sound so simplistic to ask people what their Jewish story is, but I think a lot of times it takes some deep thinking and some practicing to be able to tell that story. And there's so much value and power in those stories. So how do you teach women, young, of all ages? Because I think leadership is a lifelong experience, but how do you inspire people to really discover and articulate their own Jewish stories?
Yeah. So eloquently said. Thank you. So for the women of Orange County, I'm not going to say I wore orange today because I know it's speaking to you, but maybe. One of the things that I like to do is I like to think about objects that tell a story. And they might be very simple objects, like a piece of artificial fruit that my grandmother used to have on her table, right? And I imagine some of you have, the similar, and it sort of reminds me of her and the power that she was in my life. Or something like my daughter's passport. My daughter was the first person to be an Israeli citizen on both sides of our family. I'm the oldest. If you haven't guessed, my husband is an oldest. And here we had our first child in Jerusalem. And so for me, that little passport said something very important, not only about our own family story, but about the story of the Jewish people. I just want to share along that line, a breathtaking moment, and then talk about how that might translate into someone else's leadership story. So we lived in Israel for a long time, and my second child out of four, and I'm also a proud grandmother of four. Um, he was born. He was born in Jerusalem. My son Gabriel, and at his bris, my grandfather was there, and and our home at the time overlooked in the far distance the walls of Jerusalem. And so my son, who at that point did not have his name, was on my grandfather's arm and lying actually on his Auschwitz number. And I got up to speak to thank everyone for coming. And usually I don't have trouble speaking, but it was this sort of breathtaking moment in Jewish history. Who would have thought only decades before that my grandfather would be holding his great grandson in a Jewish state over his Auschwitz number, and feeling that the world was full of Jewish possibility and meaning. And I think about that often. The kind of story that makes me have chills, that's the story I want to tell to you, because I want to hear that from you. And I think a lot of times we minimize the moments that really change us, the moments that transform us. It was a July day, it was boiling hot, and I remember just running out of words and just wordlessly sitting down, sort of taking in this moment. And, sometimes when we describe our Jewish journey, we just do it so superficially. We talk about typical markers, a bar bat mitzvah, a Hebrew school experience, a day school graduation, a trip to Israel. And honestly, it might not be that at all. It might not be that at all. So what was the moment of inspiration? And it could be a small moment that really shifted the way that you think. Just even now, you had an aha moment thinking about your leadership roles as a younger person and how they've influenced you today. I'll share a story with you. I was teaching in a federation many, many years ago in person, the way that I'd like Heather to have our next conversation. I was, and a woman was talking about other people's stories of traveling to Israel. It was a women's philanthropy event. And she got up and said, I've never been to Israel, so I keep borrowing other people's inspiration. And then I realized one day, you can't borrow inspiration. You have to have your own inspiration. And I booked a ticket. And I'm going to invite everyone who's listening to think about a moment of I want you to think about a transcendent moment in your own life and the Jewish context in which it may have happened, and think about how you might use that story, whether it's in a social media post or in a speech. I do want to share with you, having worked professionally in two federations, the Combined Jewish Philanthropies of Boston and the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington for 17 years, I would watch, everybody's a leader, and I would watch people get up to try to get people to give money or create awareness or get people to events, and they would hold a piece of paper and they would read often a speech that someone else wrote that was uninspired, that had nothing to do with themselves, that had nothing to do with a conversation with other people. So here's my message to you. Take that away. Just use yourself. You are the canvas. You're the text. You're the story. And be able to speak deeply and profoundly from your heart. And you'll see that other people will follow you. They're not going to follow someone who reads, thank you so much for coming to this event. Your presence means so much. That's wooden. That's not anybody's story. Start with yourself and dig deep. And part of that may be finding an object or a few objects that give you meaning, that tell a Jewish story that is unique to you and no one else can tell it.
It's very interesting to me that you keep circling back to the concept of an object, because I do have such an object, which really encapsulates a lot of my Jewish journey and leadership trajectory, which honestly I only discovered while I was in Israel on a women's philanthropy mission, heart to heart. And it's a red scrapbook that my grandmother kept that we found after my father passed away. And it had all the letters in it, proudly congratulating her for her son receiving scholarship money. And both of my parents received incredible scholarships for college, for medical school, for leadership camps. And I knew that, but it crystallized in that moment when I saw how proud she was to receive, and the value of a community investing in one person. And I was already a leader, but I didn't feel it in that way. So that when you say that, that red scrapbook pops.
Yeah, and look at how emotional you feel, and the idea that could your grandmother have anticipated that you'd have that, and what you're doing for the Jewish community today. I once interviewed a woman very high powered in the healthcare world who said the reason she gives to Federation is that when she was an orphan, the Federation of Rhode Island gave her $300 to go to nursing school. It changed it opened every door to her life. And she did not forget to give back. She remembered that story. And therefore, when she came back to Federation to speak as a very competent leader in the healthcare field, she understood what it means to say, can we create belonging for other people? Can we open a door for other people? We can open that door. We must open that door. We're during COVID. Every door has been shut. And now, as we transition out, it's time to open those doors, not only for ourselves, but for other people. I just want to share with you, Heather, I'm fully vaccinated. I took my daughter back to college last week in New York, and I said, well, maybe I'll just get on the train with you. And I met some of my old friends. I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I saw my Rembrandts and I saw my Vermeers, and I saw 6 of my close friends. And in Jewish tradition, we make the Shehecheyanu blessing when we have something new that we haven't had in 30 days. So if you haven't had a piece of fruit, or you buy something that gives you particular joy, but we also say it when we don't see a friend for 30 days. And we also make a blessing if we don't see a friend in an entire year. We make the blessing Mechayei Metim, who revives the dead. When I studied this in the Talmud, Heather, I never thought I would ever say this blessing. And there I was in my friend's car, both of us crying, both of us blessing each other. And I say that because we have a unique leadership moment that all of us have to lead into right now. We are coming out of, hopefully, in stages, incrementally and safely coming out of COVID. And we've paid an enormous price in losses. And this is the time when leadership has to do its hardest, most challenging work. There's awkwardness. There are people we haven't spoken to in a long time. There are friends who maybe, because we didn't have the bandwidth, we were raising children at the same time as we were working, or maybe we felt particularly isolated and we didn't reach out to people. And we feel sort of ashamed and embarrassed. And I want to say right now, don't feel shame and don't feel embarrassed. We're all coming out of this together. Lean into it and do your best. Be as compassionate as you can, as forgiving as you can, as open as you can. This is really transitions the time when we need to lead most.
I feel like, a lot of the conversation about COVID, again, has that dark cloud over it because there's been so many tragic elements to it. But for me, I think it is an incredible opportunity for intentionality. Like, who do I want to be and who do I want to be with?
Yeah.
And who do I want to spend my time? And we've gotten that never before in my life opportunity to actually pause, sit still, listen to the still small voice and say, who do I want to be? And then step into that in a way that's broken a lot of chains of the obligations and the narrative and the treadmill that you described. So it's really, I view this conversation honestly as Bashert, because I don't want to say I look at it as so upliftingly because so much tragedy has occurred, but I do. I think it's an opportunity. And I think that women have been the leaders, many of us in our homes, on our Zooms, in our communities, in our virtual book clubs. And, the work of Federation and Giving and Need continues multifold. But for me, it feels emboldening and powerful. And I want other women, I want my daughters to feel that. I want them to feel the resilience that we've just witnessed.
Yeah. And I actually want to add to that, Heather. I think, there are always, someone said, the famous saying is, a pessimist sees the cup half empty and an optimist sees the cup half full. And someone who reads Psalms says, my cup runneth over. And I think it's sometimes hard to get to that my cup runneth over feeling when you've had 15, 16, 17, 18 months, alone, or virtually alone. And I want to say a Jewish version of a story that my daughter shared with me, my youngest shared with me. Many, many years from now, a grandchild will say, Savta, Grandma, I'm writing a paper on COVID. Did you live during the time of COVID? And the Savta says, yes, I lived during the time of COVID. And the grandchild said, I heard it was terrible. I heard millions of people died and people lost jobs and organizations collapsed and people had to go to school on a computer. Was it that way for you, Savta? And the Savta says, well, that is true. All of what you said is true, but that's not the way I remember it. I remember it was a time, I was only 7 at the time. I remember it was a time where I learned to bake bread with my dad and where my parents spent more time with me. We spent lots of time in the yard. I got to know all the names of butterflies and insects and plants. And it was a time when my parents said, we need to engage more in our community. And my mother joined a committee at the Federation. My parents sent me to Hebrew school for the first time and joined a synagogue. And that's why your mother went to Jewish day school. I think that is a story, Heather, that we can tell, that there are Jewish moments which will be created precisely because people have understood the power of community that has come out of isolation. And they'll say, yes, I'll make a donation to Federation. Yes, I'll volunteer. Yes, actually, it's time to be more educated myself, my children. This is the moment because we've had a unique opportunity that no one could have predicted and no one wanted, but it's left us with maybe a more blank canvas on which we can write the next chapter of our Jewish lives and let them be meaningful and let them be purposeful. And it's not, where you're going to take out of your closet and how you're going to dress for the next event. It's the meaning that you're going to bring to it. It's how you're going to help people. How are you going to create someone's next chapter? I mean, I think all that inspiration is really waiting for us. Yeah, I think it's waiting for us.
This has given me a lot more to think about. I wish we could go on for all day. I would love to have you on my couch and we would shut the door and have our tea and keep going. So Erica, tell me what stands in your view in the way of women leading and women stepping up to view themselves as leaders?
I think women have a lot of inner critics in their heads saying, you can't, this isn't right for you. You didn't earn it. Step back, don't step in. I hear those voices myself at times, those voices of insecurity, those voices of the imposter syndrome. And I think it's time that we not only sort of invite those voices in, they're there, but say, I hear you, but there's another voice that's calling me, and I'm going to answer that voice instead. And the other thing I want to say that gets in the way is women don't mentor each other enough. Some of my most important mentors were women who were 10 or 15 years older than me, who helped me raise my children, who helped me think through my next positions at work, who opened doors for me because they opened contacts for me. And if there's an old boys network, let there be a young and old girls network. Let's help each other. We have to help each other. We have to encourage each other. Don't only stay within your own age demographic. It hurts you and it doesn't give enough to the next generation. So take someone out, have a virtual coffee with someone who's not your age, make a suggestion. It's up to us to grow. And I think we grow leaders through the power of invitation. So let's just invite lots of people to the leadership table.
And Women's Philanthropy is the perfect place to do that because we have women of all ages and stages, and then we have a lot to learn from each other and a lot to give to each other.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
So much for this wonderful conversation. It was incredible and will definitely be the highlight of my day. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to pass it back over to Stephanie.
Heather and Erica, Thank you for your inspiring words. One of the common pillars that helped shape both of your Jewish identities were Jewish experiences at a young age. Jewish Federation of Orange County recognizes the importance of these experiences and recently relaunched our Passports to Jewish Life program, granting funds that enable children in our community to have meaningful Jewish experiences to help shape their Jewish identities and help them to pave their paths to Jewish continuity and leadership. I'd now like to turn it over to two powerful female leaders, Virtual Women's Voices co-chairs, Tanya Newman and Isabel Tischler.
Thank you all for taking the time to be with us at Virtual Women's Voices. We can't wait until we can be together again safely in person. Thank you to all of our amazing speakers, musicians, students, parents, mothers, daughters, and sisters for continuing to ensure the Jewish Federation of Orange County is here for good. Another very special thank you to our first ever diamond sponsor, Dina Marciano Designs, and to our platinum sponsor, Allergan, an AbbVie company. It has been an honor to celebrate all of you for your dedication, determination, and commitment to the Orange County Jewish community. We invite you to join us throughout the year at all of our events. Let's stay connected.
And thank you again for your support. You have made your voices heard in choosing to support the work of Jewish Federation of Orange County.